All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this video is going to be pertaining to the importance of the father's maintenance over his daughter, his moderation over his daughter, making sure that he's an important figure in her life. Because, to be very frank with you, one of the main reasons why so many of these black females today are liberal, which basically means Luciferian, aka whores and sluts. And I know a lot of people are not going to like what I'm saying, but it's the truth. To be a liberated woman, all that means is that it's okay for you to be a whore and a slut. And one of the reasons why that is the modus operandi of this modern day society is because they've taken the father out of the home, or I should say more aptly, men today in this society have allowed themselves to be taken out of the home. You've divested control over the family unit to the woman, and the woman in general is an agent of chaos. Well, that pretty much is what this court case is about. The dynamic between a father and his daughter, as well as the havoc that a liberal female can cause if you allow it, if you're not aware. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Plaintiff Rayford Conley Jr. says he dated the defendant's mother when he was 16, and she got pregnant with the defendant. At the time, she told Rayford he was the defendant's father, but when she was 8 years old, she said another man is her father. Rayford still believes he is the defendant's father.
Now, brothers, did you hear that? The plaintiff stated that he started to deal with the defendant's mother when he was 16 years old. So already what that's telling you is that, number one, he was too young to be engaging in any form of a serious relationship. He was also having quote unquote unprotected sex. And also he was never taught about the woman. Because that is really the genesis, the 0 point of a lot of the confusion in the quote unquote relationships between males and females in this society. A lot of these young brothers are not taught about the woman. So they enter into these quote unquote relationships with an open eye. And when I say an open eye, I'm not talking about in regards to being vigilant. I'm talking about in wonderment. They marvel like, oh, wow, I actually have a girlfriend. Wow, I'm actually out on a date. Oh, golly, I'm actually feeling some coochie right now. They're not prepped, man. They're not trained properly. And it leads them to make a series of mistakes that are going to reverberate for the rest of their life. That's one of the main reasons why I have this channel. And every once in a while, I get liberal females who come in the comments and they're looking for attention, or they're trying to start the gender war. My channel is geared towards the so-called black man. Why is that? Because he has to take the information that he can glean from these videos and apply them in his relationships so that he can build a stronger rapport with his woman. That's the importance. That's the role. That's the necessity. Unfortunately, we have a convention in this society where the so-called black community is very strongly bent towards the church system. And in the church system, what happens is that these liberal females, they drag many of these men into these quote unquote churches where they can be indoctrinated into venerating Heru and Tammuz and being effeminized. And what overwhelmingly occurs in the church system? The woman starts to become a harlot for the pastor, for the so-called reverend, or whatever you want to call him. Why is that? Because knowledge is an aphrodisiac. You understand? That's a cult of personality, these churches, especially mega churches. That's why you'll hear about the pastor having sex with 80 women in the congregation and 40 men and 20 little boys, because he acts as the shepherd, quote unquote, over his flock. When you have a flock, you can do with them what you will. That's why it's very important that when you're a teacher, that you also understand the scope of your power. And that cannot be underestimated. But once again, this brother was never taught anything. That's very obvious.
So he petitioned the court for a paternity test. Defendant Kavina Phillips says growing up, she had no idea who her father was, and she felt like she'd been abandoned. As a result, Kavina became a crack addict when she was 23.
Hey, brothers, you hear that? Due to the fact that she was not aware or assured of who her father was or who her father figure should be, she became a crack addict. And of course, we know what oftentimes is associated with a drug addiction. She was sleeping around, most likely engaging in haphazard conduct, laying down and waking up with who knows who, men, women, selling her ass for crack, so on and so forth. And of course, in an extended way, from a certain perspective, all these liberal females out here, as I stated at the outset of this video, they're engaging in whoredom and being sluts because they're not being moderated. And the so-called black man, you've divested the power that you're supposed to have over to the woman to lead our people. And the woman cannot lead. She can't lead flies to shit. I don't care what they say about matriarchy and all that other nonsense. The woman cannot lead. Her job is to preside over the children. And what you'll notice is that when the children hit puberty, they start to avoid and ignore many of the decrees of the female of the household. They don't pay her any mind because the woman is not a real leader. She was not set up to lead on a macrocosmic scale. Now, is she set up to lead the household? Absolutely. When everything's in order, yes, the woman can lead the household, meaning preside over the children and also confer with the man. That's her job. But that's one of the main reasons why you'll oftentimes see many of these liberal females trying to go back and forth with men on the internet, because they know damn well that they shouldn't be leading, but they don't want to let go of the power that has been given to them by the liberal Caucasian. So they're battling within their own mind. That's why I tell you brothers all the time, inside of the heart of the liberal female, she has three alter egos, which are the racialist, meaning she always wants to attention monger over race because she wants to act as if she's racially conscious when really, in all reality, she's really not. Most black women don't care about race. They only care about themselves. In reality, liberal black women anyway, let me specify. Racialist, globalist, which means what? She wants to hold hands with everybody. She wants to love everybody. She's pro-homosexual, pro-lesbian, pro-bisexual. She's pro-freedom of expression, right? And then, of course, the largest alter ego, which is the feminist. So that's what you brothers have to deal with. That's what you brothers are going to have to confront. And that's all of us. We're going to have to deal with all the demons that's on the so-called black woman. But first, we have to deal with our own demons. That's why I say, once again, this channel is dedicated to the so-called black man.
And due to her addiction, she lost custody of all 4 of her children. Kavina is eager to find out the truth today, once and for all.
All rise. This court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Greg Mathis presiding. You may now be seated.
You've petitioned the court for a DNA test to see if you're Kavina's father?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, so why don't you give me some background?
When I was 16 years old, her mother and I had a relationship that went over a year.
You guys didn't have a relationship. You guys were holding hands, walking down by the lake. You went to the movies, and she probably gave you your first piece of ass, or second, or maybe third piece of ass. That's about it. Y'all wasn't in no damn relationship.
During that time, she was conceived. I was led to believe that Kavina was my child. When she was 8 months, we had took her on a trip to Mississippi, my family and I. And when we returned back from Mississippi, her mother told me that she was not my child.
The reason why she told you that the defendant was not your child is because she didn't want to be with you anymore. That is Liberal Female 101, Agent of Chaos, Chapter 1. Lied to the man, whether or not the child is his. Today the child is yours, tomorrow it's not, next week, oh, maybe it is yours. That's why, once again, brothers, you get that paternity test. That is mandatory.
That she was actually named after her father, which his name is Kevin. She named her Kavina.
Yes, Kevin was the person who she wanted to be the dad at that moment.
That's rough.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not making fun of it, and it's not really funny. That's
Not funny at all.
something to be told.
Yeah, so,
And what was your reaction?
initially hurt. I mean, because my family and I had accepted her as my child. We took her, we kept her on the weekends. My mom kept her on the weekends.
Through what age?
Up until 8 months. When
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what happened from there?
You know, brothers, when you read the scriptures, not to digress, but when you read the book of Ecclesiasticus, it tells you in many different chapters about the importance of the father presiding over his daughter. I believe in chapter 7, in chapter 26, chapter 42. It tells you the importance of a father presiding over his daughter, man. To watch over an impudent eye. To not marvel if she steps out and she does things that could embarrass your family if you coddle her. You're not supposed to be smiley with your daughter. You're supposed to understand the seriousness of presiding over them, of raising them. Because that is a commodity. Once again, you have to look at your children like a stock. You have to invest in them. And when you don't understand the importance of presiding over your daughter, you have what we have here. We have total confusion in the so-called black community, complete confusion. Because they've allowed the female, who is an agent of chaos by her very nature, to do whatever she feels like doing. And now the toothpaste is out of the tube and it cannot be put back in. The only way to rectify this situation is for the liberal black female to be completely ostracized. And the only way that can be accomplished is for the so-called black man to reassume his rightful mentality, which is a king's mentality. Brothers today do not have a king's mentality. They just try to act like they do. There are too many simps in the so-called black community.
I eventually moved to Mississippi in 19...
Did you stop immediately with the communications and the visitation?
I did.
Yeah.
In 85, I moved to Mississippi. I came back to Chicago in 88, where I ran across her mother again. And me and her visited for a spell. Not one time did she say that this was my child. Not one time did she mention her Kavina at all to me.
You said that you guys visited for a spell. In other words, you got to knock down that coochie a few more times because the mother was most likely experiencing a dry spell. Things didn't, quote unquote, work out with Kevin, who was allegedly her father. So she gave you another chance. That's how many of these liberal females operate. Men are like a merry-go-round for them, if you allow it. That's why, once again, when you read the scriptures, it tells you about how your daughter, she'll open her quiver for every arrow. She'll sit down by every hedge. I believe that's in Ecclesiasticus, the 26th chapter. You cannot allow the woman to, as the scriptures say, gad abroad. Gad means to troop, to walk wherever she wants. In this society, they allow the female to go wherever she wants. And that's only going to lead to mischief. That's why I did a video a while ago about how they're allowing these Saudi Arabian women to drive. Why is that? Because they're trying to incite and provoke these Saudi Arabian women into being harlots and whores. That's why. And I know a lot of people are not going to like that. I'm sure about that. But that is just my perception. And I'm sure that it's the perception of many of the indigenous men in that region as well.
So, in my mind, that this is not my child. So I left that situation alone. Now, over the years, I have tried to find her on Facebook just to see what kind of young lady she turned out to be. Okay, Thanksgiving of last year, she reaches out to me on Facebook. I accepted her friend request, and the first question she asked me was her father. And I explained to her, as I just stated to you, that her mother said I was not her father, that she was named after her father, which is Kevin.
All right, young lady, what do you want to tell me?
Well, growing up over the years, I felt abandoned.
By whom?
By everybody. My mom would tell me that.
Of course, because for the mother, you were just a science experiment. You were a tool that she was going to try to use to keep the man that she thought she wanted at the time and to run off the man that she thought she didn't want at the time. Once again, brothers, the woman is whimsical and capricious by nature. She's not even sure who she likes at a particular moment. For the most part, many of them have all type of demons swirling around in their head. And you have to assist them. That's why they have to be moderated over very intensely from their youth all the way into their early 20s, man. In the ancient world, that's why a woman was married away so young, because that was a way for the father to change over ownership of the woman from himself to the husband. I've explained this before. That is where you get the practice of a father walking his daughter down the aisle to her groomsmen. That represents a change over of ownership. And once again, many people are not going to like what I'm saying, but I deal with reality. I don't deal with delusional thinking. I don't deal with imaginary, fantastical aspirations over what life should be. I'm not an idealist. I deal with reality. Of course, you have a mode, you have a vision of how society should be, but you have to deal with what is first. And our people don't like to deal with what is. They like to deal with fantastical aspirations, which is really Luciferianism. For the most part, the vast majority of so-called black people are Luciferians. They just don't even know it. And that's why there's so much confusion amongst our people, because we're not supposed to be dwelling in that mindset, that Luciferian mindset. The Most High gave us concepts to meditate on. He gave us precepts to read up on. Those are the things that we should be meditating on so that we can keep ourselves away from a lot of these confusing situations.
It was between Rayford and Kevin.
How young were you when your mom first
As early
told
as 4
you
years
that?
old as I can remember.
4 years
As
old?
early as 4 years old. My mom told me of a time when I was 2 years old that I supposedly had seen him, and I told him he wasn't my father, which,
At 2?
that's what she told me. I can only...
In other words, your mother's a liar. Your mother lies to herself and she lied to you. And what would a 2-year-old child know about paternity anyway?
You did what? She said at 2 years old.
I told this man he wasn't my father. This is a memory that she has.
Conjured up.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Even Judge Mathis understands that the liberal female likes to conjure up false memories, that she will oftentimes implant within her own subconscious to convince herself that it's true so that she can teach it to her children.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So pretty basically I felt abandoned. I didn't have a father to go to. She always told me that, oh, my boy's got a father to go to and you don't. And I'm just looking like, oh, he don't nobody care about me. One time...
Well, your mother didn't care about you. She wanted to see you destroyed because she understood that the actual father was someone that she did not want to be with. So naturally, she didn't really want you. Not to be harsh, but that's just the reality of the situation. She really didn't want you.
Time me, Kevin, and my mom were in the car together, and she finally came and told the truth that Kevin wasn't my father.
How old were you?
I was like 12.
And did it go as he just described? You all stayed apart until...
So the mother waits until you're almost at puberty to tell you that the man that she had made you believe was your father really was not your father. And at that age, 12 or 13, a child is just starting to hit puberty. So they're already going to be filled with a lot of hormones that are going to cause changes to them, both physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, that can result in them acting out in strange ways that can hurt their life for the rest of their life. That's why it's very important for you to be honest with yourself from before the child is born so that you can teach the child things that actually have substance all the way through their life so that they can depend on you. The job of the parent is to be dependable, not to be a source of confusion, because then the child's going to be confused, man. Why do I say these things? I don't say these things for brothers to feel like I'm dictating to them. Once again, I just state my perspective. But when you understand the importance of how every other person in your community affects you, because that's really what a community is, it's different links in a chain. Yes, we have to pay attention to all these things, starting with myself and then trickling down to everyone else in the chain, man. That's what's relevant. Once again, that's how you know that so-called black people do not have a culture, because in a strong culture, you know that my next door neighbor is teaching their children the same things that I'm teaching my children, so on and so forth, all the way down the line. So now I can depend on my next door neighbor because I know what they're about. They know what I'm about. Our people, we don't have that luxury, unfortunately.
Last year, when you all reached out to each other on Facebook?
Yeah, at the age of 23, I turned to drugs. I led a life of destruction. And I'm writing a book to, maybe inspire people that has been in my situation.
Good. What type of life did you live? What?
23, I was addicted to crack cocaine. Been in the Department of Corrections 4 times for theft, violence, drugs. I have 4 children of my own who I'm currently trying to get back out of DCFS custody. Been 6 months clean. I'm a full-time student.
And let me say this very quickly. She has 4 children. I doubt if they're all by the same man. As a matter of fact, I would be willing to put more money on the notion that all 4 children were most likely by 4 different men, at the very least 3 different men. And oftentimes liberal black females, they love to come on the internet and get into these arguments about where's the daddy at. Brothers, please do not get into a back and forth with the liberal black female who comes on my comments. Like I always tell cats, let me take out the trash. Don't go back and forth with them. Let me take out the trash. All right? Because anybody who's in their right mind would never ask someone over the internet where the daddy is. You're supposed to ask that woman where the daddy is. But you know why you will never ask that woman where the daddy is because intrinsically and essentially, you know that the woman is a child. That's why the liberal black woman will never ask the actual mother where the daddy is or where the daddies are, because they have lower expectations for the woman than they do for the man. And you're correct in that assessment. But then don't try to come back and utilize your feminist alter ego and claim that women are equal to men when they're not. Okay, so let's be consistent. As soon as you ask a man over the internet where a strange woman's baby daddy is, what you're really saying is that the woman should not be held accountable for her actions. So essentially, you're saying that the woman is a child. So you agree with me. I have no problem with that.
Student, been to rehab. I got a good man who encourages me.
Good for you. Now you see that, brothers? Her life is on the up and up because she has a good man to encourage her and lead her and inform her on things and help her out when she starts to plunge down that wormhole of instability.
Every day. And just not looking back.
Good for her. God bless her. Now all she needs to do is take that piercing off out of the top of her damn lip. Looking like a $2 hoe. Now that you're reforming your image, take that shit out of your damn lip. You're only allowed to pierce your nose or your ears. Men and women. Having a nose piercing or ear piercings are fine. But piercings anywhere else, no.
All right, well, good. I'm glad to hear you got 6 months clean. And I encourage you to continue. You don't want to write a book and then
Go back.
Yeah,
it was
6 months is a pretty short time.
Stay tuned for the paternity test.
Did she tell you this?
Yes, she told me that she was struggling with addictions. You know, it's more of a reason why I'm reaching out for her. You know, for her to have some sense of identity and support.
Okay.
And stability, because Lord knows she needs it. Once again, so-called black man, you're supposed to act as the platform, as the foundation of stability for the woman, man. Because the woman by nature is unstable, psychologically, spiritually. You know, I'm half joking, but but it's true. For the most part, many of these females, they struggle with any form of balance in their life. You're supposed to provide that. That's why I always tell cats, you're not supposed to be going back and forth arguing with the woman. And one of the main ways that you stop from getting into arguments with the woman is to make sure that most of the sentiments that you put out are based in fact and substance. A lot of you cats act like women, man. You want to go back and forth with your emotions and your opinions and your feelings all fucking day. It's not what life is about. That's not what a man is about. There are going to be certain topics that we're just going to have a certain feeling about something, but for the most part, the vast majority of your observations should be based on empirical data. And if the female cannot respect that, it's not so much about whether or not she can receive it, but if she can't respect it, then she has to have a nice day. You cannot allow the female to pull you down to a level of emotionality in regards to your interactions with her. She has to respect manhood. If she can't do that, then she has to go. And you're not putting the onus on them to respect manhood by showing the differentiation between manhood and the feminine principle. The feminine principles is about support. It's about nurturing. That's the beauty of the woman. And women are beautiful and they're essential. But you have to show the disparity between the man and the woman by providing that balance. And when that balance is not there, you're going to have confusion.
I'm a man. I have 7 other children, and I raise all of my kids. I would not ever abandon her.
In your household?
Yes.
You have 7 children?
I have 7 kids. They all grown in Mississippi. They all in their own home, you know.
Oh.
But I raised all of my children.
7 by the same mother?
No, come on.
How many? What do you mean, come on? It should be. You act like that's a...
No, it should not necessarily be all by the same woman, Judge Mathis. Once again, brothers, there's nothing wrong with having more than one woman. I know that topic oftentimes is quote-unquote controversial. I have no idea why. I get certain simps that come on my channel trying to go back and forth about how Matthew the 19th chapter was Christ saying that you can only have one woman. No, that's not what Matthew the 19th chapter was about. What Christ was detailing was what was the substantiation for a divorce. That's all he was talking about. But if you're a simp, or if you're being taught by a simp, which a lot of you brothers are, if you're being taught by a simp, if your teacher is someone who venerates the feminine principle, and why would your teacher or your pastor or your quote-unquote elder be a venerator of the feminine principle? Easy. Because the woman today has all the jobs. So that means that most likely she's paying the tithes. She's the one making sure that the temple or the school or the church stays open. So they're going to make sure that they appeal to the woman. But no, Matthew the 9th chapter is not talking about how a man can only have one woman. That was Christ detailing the parameters for divorce.
You act like that's a strange concept. Yeah, there's people who have 9 kids. I know many families who have 5, 7, 9, 10 children. So don't give the impression, sir, that somehow is a strange notion.
No, it's not a strange notion. As a matter of fact, you have cases where one man has 20 children by one woman. The boxer Sonny Liston, I believe his father has something like 24 children by the same woman. There's nothing wrong with that. In the same way, there's nothing wrong with a man having more than one. And again, I'll probably be doing a video on this relatively soon, especially if I'm able to get access back to my original channel, and I'll probably just make the new channel for topics pertaining to the Bible and current events or something of that nature. But no, there's nothing wrong with having more than one woman. And every time I say this, I have to provide context, because so many of these modern day men are so emotional that they believe that if you have more than one woman, they're trying to figure out how they're going to balance it out in their minds, because they were never trained on the woman. They've been trained their whole life. The vast majority of so-called black males in this society have been trained for their entire lives to venerate the female principle. They've been trained to obey, show great obeisance to any female in authority as this grand light giver, as this entity of wisdom and knowledge and understanding. That's why they love to brag about how their mothers or their grandmother taught them the Bible. Nigga, if your mother or your grandmother taught you the Bible, you don't know the Bible. Sorry. And that's one of the main reasons why many so-called black men today cannot grasp how you can have more than one woman in order. Now, as I always say, just because you can doesn't mean you should. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of men in this society should not have more than one woman, because you get your mind blown. A lot of cats can't even handle one woman. How the hell you gonna handle 2 or 3 in order? But the woman herself knows that you can have more than one woman. The only reason why they fight against it is because they're worried that they're actually going to have to work to maintain a certain standard for themselves for the relationship to continue onward. Because in the current dynamic that we have of one man and one woman, the female basically knows after a while, when she becomes bored, she can start to play games. She can ration out the coochie. She does not even have to know how to cook or clean in the modern day definition of womanhood in order to stipulate to a man what he should be doing. She doesn't have to do shit anymore. Now, in societies where men have more than one woman, the woman understands that if she does not keep up her end of the bargain, she's going to be relegated to the back of the line. So what having more than one woman in these other cultures does is it ensures a sense of load balancing. Many of these females who act as multiple wives, they'll say to themselves, wow, I better do my part or I'm going to be put on the back burner, and I can't have that. In this society, it's the opposite. Not only are you not allowed to have more than one woman, but many of these women have more than one man. And that's why they start to conduct themselves in a very denigrating way towards you. But that is what you allow, so that's what you want, so-called black man. Remember, you get what you deserve.
Oh, shit.
No, I didn't mean it.
All right. I mean,
you're
you're playing it to this stereotype, man. That's why I'm coming down on you.
Okay.
Playing it.
Well, I agree with that to a degree. The plaintiff is playing into a stereotype because he was not able to explain himself properly. Whatever you do in life, you have to be able to explain it. You cannot just expect people to be copacetic with what you adhere to, what you do, or what you believe if you cannot articulate yourself properly. And many so-called black men, they have more than one woman, but they're made to believe that something is wrong with it, or they should be embarrassed about it. And you shouldn't be embarrassed about it. Once again, go back and read 2 Samuel, the 12th chapter, verses 7 and 8. The Most High speaks to King David and he tells him, I gave you your wives, plural. I gave you your wives, plural. Nothing wrong with it. It's all throughout the law. It's all throughout the scriptures. When Paul tells the deacons and the bishops that they should only have one wife, why is that? Because the woman is a distraction, so you have a responsibility to the flock. If you got 3, 4, 5 different women, then all of a sudden you have 3, 4, 5 different headaches that you have to pay attention to all the time. You're not going to have the appropriate time to do your job as leading a congregation, leading a flock of people that you have to preside over every day. But for the average man, no, there's nothing wrong with it at all. And that was only Paul's understanding. That was his preference. That's not scriptural. In the same way that Paul would state that a man should not have long hair, but he says, I'm not speaking according to the law. I'm just speaking according to my own personal preference.
Playing into this stereotype. They got a bunch of baby mamas out there and they're all on welfare. He had all these 7 kids by 4 different women. He can't spend time with all 7 of them. That's the type of stereotype that is reinforced when you act like it's unusual for a mother and father to raise several kids in the same household. Come on, Judge, you know better than that. Where you come from? That's unheard of. All right.
Well, Judge Mathis, let's be for real, brother. You've been on TV for over 20 years. So ain't no way in the world you're going to tell me that you have not banged out any of them broads in your audience or any of your female fans. Let's be for real. I'm sure that you have some little side Judge Mathis babies floating around the United States. But you're not going to say it because you have an image to uphold. That's truly the problem, is that the so-called black man has been made to believe that he should be embarrassed about having other women. There's nothing wrong with having more than one woman as long as everything is on the up and up and everybody understands what's going on. But now when you got to have the side chicks here, the side chicks there, nobody knows about this other person. I mean, to be quite honest with you, the so-called black community, they should be the last entity trying to tell anyone else how to have a family, because the family structure in the so-called black community is destroyed. And that's just one man with one woman. So monogamy has not worked for the so-called black community at all, especially with the balance of economic power being purposefully given over to the woman by the Caucasian to disenfranchise the so-called black man. So really, if our people would think on a higher level, the man would have multiple women and the women would be pooling their resources together to build up their so-called community. But the liberal black woman is more concerned with building herself up. So, so-called black man, that's why you must respond in kind by making sure that you understand the overall business framework of this society. Start your own business, have your own place, and you deal with these women accordingly. You deal with them according to their conduct. And don't feel pressured to believe that you have to adhere to some type of convention so that everybody else can look at you and say, oh, wow, you're doing it the right way. Most people don't know what the right way is. And you'll find that the vast majority of people have a really severe problem with both reading and listening comprehension. And that never ceases to amaze me, because our people lead with their emotions. The so-called black man has been taught to lead with his emotions as opposed to being a deductive thinker, a deductive reasoner, someone who uses empirical data, substantive information to come to a conclusion. The so-called black man has the brain of his mother. That's a major problem.
All right. No, it's not, sir. I'm sorry I got to come down on you, but I got to clean this up. You messed it up. I got to clean this up.
Well, you have to clean it up for your viewing audience, because you have to make sure that you straddle the line of liberalism. And of course, as we can all see, the vast majority of people in his audience are females.
I watch you every day, and I know how you're going to be.
All right.
This is not a shock. I accept it.
Good.
All right. But, no, I have 4 different baby mothers.
Okay.
And 4 was in the household, and the other 3 was weekend kids.
Okay.
But I took care of them.
All right. And you did see them often?
Yes, I did. Every weekend.
And the mother, when is the last time you spoke with her mother?
I spoke with her mother in November, right after her and I...
How about prior to that?
1988.
Wow.
1988 is the last time I had any contact with her.
She never asked for support, financial support?
She did not ask for financial support because she did not want him in her life, Judge Mathis. The mother was an agent of chaos. She wanted the new man to be the father of the daughter. That's why she made the daughter believe that that man was her father all the way until she was 12 years old. By the time the daughter was 12 years old, the mother probably said to herself, you know what, the jig is up. I don't like this little girl anyway. So I'm going to let her know that this man is not her father, because I don't care how she feels about it anyway.
Not heard anything from her since 1988.
What has been your communications since Thanksgiving? What has that been like?
We do Facebook conversations. We have had phone conversations.
Pleasant,
regular,
no tension?
Excuse me?
No tension, accusations.
No.
She didn't say, Dad, you abandoned me, you're no good. You didn't say, I heard you was on drugs. What's your problem? None of that? Good.
She asked me, and every time that we talk, a majority of all the times that we talked to her, communicated through Facebook, it was the fact of how she's doing, things of that nature, and to reassure her that I didn't abandon her.
Okay. You have anything else to say? You want to say something to him in open court, perhaps?
Thank you for accepting my friend request, and thank you for my Mother's Day gift.
Okay, no, thank you for accepting this thing to come to Judge
And may I say one more thing? In my mom's defense, because it's still my mom, she was a good mom. At the end, she just didn't know how to handle emotional situation between me and my father. But she had.
Well, she didn't understand how to deal with real life because she created lies for herself. Because she was never taught how to conduct herself with other people, as most liberal black females are not taught how to conduct themselves with other people. They're not taught how to interact because the liberal black female is raised to believe that everything is supposed to go her way and she should never be held accountable for her actions. That's the reality of the situation. And you're defending your mother now because most likely when she got into her upper years, she finally attained to some level of maturity, quote unquote, or modicum of maturity where she could finally be honest with you. And she was able to repair the damage that she did to you to a certain degree. But once again, brothers, as a man, you have to moderate not just over the children, but over the woman as well. Because they're always teeter-tottering, man. It's no joke.
She's did a good job to the best of her ability.
Good. I love to hear that because a lot of women struggle. I love to hear that. A lot of women struggle for a variety of reasons, and they have children, and I always encourage the children. I always say to the children, because I get young people a lot who say, I can't stand my mother, she wasn't no good, or I can't stand her. First thing I say, have you ever forgiven any of your friends when they cross you or betray you? Oh, yeah. A lot of times. There are a lot of friends that cross me, yeah? And we stay cool, though, okay? But don't you think your mother is due the same type of forgiveness as somebody on the street?
Let me say this very quickly, brothers, and to a degree I agree with Judge Mathis. Because the connection between yourself and your father, yourself and your mother, is far more important than with the average person. But pay very close attention to what Judge Mathis did right here. He created a convention where he would put the daughter and every other child who was raised, quote unquote, in a very ill-fitting way, or in a very malignant way, to be quite frank with you, a very poisonous way, to guilt trip them into, quote unquote, forgiving the mother, as opposed to holding her accountable for her deceitfulness, her lies, her duplicity. She was the origin of all of this confusion, and that is why I make these videos geared towards you brothers, man. Again, my channel is not based on the blame game or the gender war. I put the onus on the so-called black man to be the decision maker and to understand the consequences of all of our decisions. When you're 16 years old, as the plaintiff was, and he decides that he's going to skeet up in some broad, you have to be trained and informed on what the ramifications of that is going to be. And 30 plus years later, all this pain that you see here in this court case, and of course you have people, oh, this is scripted, this is, well, I guarantee you there is a situation just like this happening somewhere in the United States, most likely 1,000 times over. So I use these court cases as a backdrop to speak on realistic situations, whether it's quote unquote scripted or not. I really don't give a shit. Point being is this: the judge created a scenario to put the onus on people to always forgive the mother. I guarantee you, had this been about the father, he would not have been as forgiving, because it is intrinsically ingrained in people to hold the man to a higher standard. So brothers have to grasp that. When the woman comes with this notion about being equal, they don't even believe that they're equal to men. They don't really believe that. They're just trying to see if they can get you to believe it. Because once they get you to believe it, then that will assist them in getting themselves to believe it. They're trying to craft a fictitious world for themselves to dwell in. Because the man is the paragon of rulership, they want to ascend to the man's level. And the only way they can do that is to get you to accept that you have to step down off the pedestal so that they can step up on top of it. So what Mathis did there, to me, was very revelatory. And is partially based in something of substance. Yes, you should have a far more forgiving nature towards your mother and father than the average person. But notice he used that example for the mother. I guarantee you, had it been for the father, he would not have been as forgiving.
So, that's what I always say, and I'm glad to hear that's your position.
Can I say one more
obviously.
thing?
Yes.
I was good that you hear that said that because I went to my son's graduation yesterday and he didn't even want to speak to me. So I'm glad you said that. I hope he sees this and.
That's right. Or you.
Well, yes, he probably didn't want to speak to you because you brought a lot of havoc into your life, but it's not all your fault because of what your mother did. Once again, brothers, we cannot point the finger at the woman. We have to save the woman from herself. How does that happen? By training our sons for what to look for when they decide to embark on so-called quote-unquote serious relationships in this society. Does that young lady that you're quote-unquote dating, does she respect the masculine principle? What type of family does she come from? Is it stable? Was there a strong male figure in her house? Or is it dominated by that frenetic matriarchal energy? Because, brothers, that should become generational. And it might take 4, 5, 6 generations for someone to step in and nip it in the bud and stop it, man, and controvert it.
Or you tell it to him. Now, lastly, we're going to go and get the results, but sounds like you were interested and therefore you want to be a father. And whether he's the father or not, I think this would be a good part of that book. I think you'll sell some books. After overcoming your obstacles, you tracked each other down to...
Well, has she really overcome them, or is she just in the midst of overcoming them? She clearly needs help. So, hopefully the plaintiff, this brother, will engraft himself in her life and help her clean her shit up. Maybe he can help her reclaim some type of relationship with her son, because I'm sure that her son is very disdainful towards her for the bad example that she set, because that connection between the mother and the son is another very, very powerful dynamic, which is why it's extolled in a lot of the pagan mythological systems. The mother holding the male son, Aset and Heru.
To see, you still weren't sure. I guess this is your witness.
My mom.
All right, what's your name? What do you want to tell me?
What I want to tell you, add to what my son has said, well, all those children weren't your biological children. He, in the relationship with a lady, with children, he stayed there. He was there as their father. They accept him as their father. They love him. And my son, in his defense, he's not perfect like none of us are.
That's right.
If he had known that this child was his sweetheart, Calvina, I'm sorry for saying this child, Calvina was his, he would have been there. He had been there for the one that was here and one that wasn't here.
I believe
he
that.
have loved him. Them.
I believe that.
This is the man he is.
All right.
The results of the paternity test when we return.
So why don't you let Mr. Conley take a look and, Mr. Conley, and...
I'm your father.
Wow.
She need to stand up. I was worried when she dropped down that fast that damn wig was going to fly off her damn head.
I love you, sweetheart. I would always be your grandmother. You can always come to me. You will never have to worry about that.
It's a nice story, but here's something that all brothers have to consider whenever you're going to engage yourself in a situation like this that's filled with so much pollution. People like the defendant, they have layers and layers and layers of demonism that they need help getting rid of. So they have to be prepared for that. Whenever you allow someone into your life that has dealt with years and years of hardship, affliction, adversity, and maltreatment, you have to be prepared for what you're going to have to deal with if you're going to get on that journey with them. So.
I'm happy. It's over with. I done probably embarrassed myself on TV. But how you got daddy?
Well, I think whatever you've done on TV is a lot less embarrassment than them years and years of using crack and sucking random dicks. I mean, just being real about it. But, you know, God bless you, and hopefully everything works out.
Daddy,
Sweetheart, no.
I have a daddy.
And you have a grandmother.
And a grandmother. A real grandma.
Thank you.
I'm just satisfied that our 33-year quest is finally answered. That
And we love you from the beginning because we used to keep you all the time.
And what more can I
We took you
ask
to
for?
Mississippi.
Yeah,
You was our little dog.
But anyway, that's it on this video. Bros, I can't stress enough. It's very important to be there for your daughters and for your sons. But just really in general, the so-called black man has to be properly prepped before he engages in these relationships with these liberal females especially. The only solution is that they have to be ostracized. In order to do that, the so-called black man has to be trained in regards to what he should be looking for as opposed to what he should reject. Any sign of matriarchy in that woman's family, you got to get rid of that woman. That woman's nothing but a concubine. That's all she is. And she's going to try to spread as much confusion as she can until she's put in this situation where she has to confess. But anyway, peace.